Hi everyone and welcome to Priority Holder. And today we'll be playing red-green elementals in the Explore format. Now you may be asking yourself, why would we want to play red-green elementals? Well, I was scanning over the different cards in the tribe and just realized there's some decent synergy overlap for like a very aggressive build. So I decided to go with that. So the most aggressive parts of this deck is like the Landfall sub thing we have going on. So 4 copies of Akoum Hellhound, 0/1 that gets +2/+2 for every Landfall trigger, and Brushfire Elemental, which is a 2-mana 1/1 haste, little extra evasion thrown on there, and it also gets +2/+2 every time we get a land in the battlefield. So for that reason, we play a package of 4 Fabled Passage, and I threw in an Evolving Wilds in there just for fun. Because of that, it distorts the mana base a little bit, so we have to play a fairly high count of basics so we don't run out. Supporting those is 4 copies of Scorch Spitter. 1/1 that attacks and deals an extra damage, so it effectively is attacking for 2 damage. And in addition to that, we have 3 copies of Thunderkin Awakener. This is an interesting one that has haste, and whenever it attacks, it can temporarily reanimate an elemental from our graveyard with toughness less than Thunderkin's toughness. So all these little 1/1 toughness creatures we have can be brought back temporarily with Thunderkin for some extra damage. And our tribal synergy payoff is Creeping Trailblazer. Red-green 2/2 gives our other elementals +1/+0, and it has a pump ability on top of that. Rounding our elementals is Overgrowth Elemental, a 3/2 that can place a counter and gets a little extra value. And Underworld Rage-Hound, this is a card I love a lot, love playing it in draft. 3/1 attacks each combat if able, and has escape for 4 mana and 3 cards. So this is an elemental that can be brought back with Thunderkin and also by its own ability. And so we just have some removal spells in there. And the other thing we have going on is Domri, Anarch of Bolas. I just like this Planeswalker. It's hard to find good builds for it, but it's just really good when you do find them, with this sort of +1 power creature anthem and just a little bit of utility in its abilities. And the other card I'm trying out is Atarka's Command. I know this has had a lot of play in standards past. I just didn't have a lot of wild cards to devote to it, so went ahead and got 2 copies of it because it can allow you to put an extra land into play at instant speed. With all of our landfall creatures can really make a big difference. None of that, but it just has really powerful abilities on it. So excited to see how that plays out. We get a free Jegantha companion, and there's some other cards I was thinking about. But yeah, that's red-green elementals. So let's jump into some games. Okay, looks like we have a good hand. Pretty much exactly what we're looking for. Yeah, easy turn 1. Akoum Hellhound. Now the Evolving Wilds is a little tough here. It'll allow us to get double landfall with the Hellhound, but not actually cast another threat, so that's a little unfortunate. But hitting for 4 damage on turn 2 is not bad. Still have Play with Fire up. Burning Tree. Let's see what comes next. Another Burning Tree. How does this always happen? Alright, so that's not the worst. Usually there's always a Robber of the Rich at the end of that sequence, so we can live with that. Okay, did not hit a land, which is unfortunate, so it seems like the best play is just to play a Rage-Hound, because I can just attack through most of their creatures and even threaten a block. And this is an absolute massacre. Goblin Chain Whirl is public enemy number 1 for this deck. I mean, we have the Strangle in hand, but that's just such a devastating blow to us right there. it's going to be hard to come back from that, especially with the missed land drop there to not fall off another creature. Torbran is tough. We just don't... our removal doesn't really line up with that very well. So the only thing we can hope to do is to try and race them. And so Brushfire has a sort of strange evasion ability where creatures power 2 or less can't block it. So that's how it just went right past Torbran. And so things are bleak. I'm just trying to set up for like possible land, Fabled Passage into Atarka's command, some sort of super turn next turn to maybe kill them. But Lightning Strike to our face is going to prevent that, because now we're forced into the chump block, and there's no way out of it at this point. So we tried our best, but yeah, Goblin Chain Whirl is just a massacre against our deck.
I look forward to seeing you.
And that's a risky run, but we'll try again. Okay, so noticing that they have Yorion Companion means that they're likely going to be a slower deck. Now, with the Creeping Trailblazer in hand, go ahead and try to play as many creatures right now as possible, because it has that power boosting passive, so that'll allow us to shell out way more damage. Okay, so a Portable Hole taking out one of our creatures. That's okay. Fabled Passage is nice for some landfall action. Yeah, Trailblazer is very strong in this deck. And the thing is, when the landfall situations go well, they like really go well. So here it is. We hit them for 8 effectively, and they're already down to 10 life, starting their turn 3. So Trial Ambition. We're going to sacrifice something. Okay, that is incredible right there, because Thunderkin is going to bring a creature back from our graveyard, which we conveniently have now. Get a landfall trigger, and a second Trailblazer means that opponent's dead. And so that second game is exactly why we play this deck. You saw how, despite 2 turns of interaction against our creatures, we still had the clean turn 4 kill. So that is what this deck is capable of. Now, it's not a common opening to see Darksteel Citadel into Shadow Spear, so it might be like some sort of Ensoul Artifact deck. Or we send in with our creatures. Patchwork Automaton. Okay, so definitely an artifact build. Fortunately, Patchwork takes a little time to build up, and so it will not be able to properly block anything we're doing right now. Not only that, but Creeping Trailblazer is unlocking a ton of damage right now. So we send in, it's they could chump block, but that's already 7. So they're already down to 8 life. So this last game and this one, you could see how quickly this deck can shell out damage. Especially if the opponent has Thought Seizes or Shocklands. Okay, Stone Coil is good. Notably, it has protection from multicolored, of which we have many. And they go ahead and boost it up to a 6/6. However, just based on what we have going, that just doesn't seem like it's going to be good enough. It's like too little too late, especially with the landfall trigger right here. We're just going to be able to absolutely hammer them. So thinking through some scenarios, like we have Snakeskin Veil, which could give a counter, and Scorch Spitter is going to deal 1 direct damage. So basically just send in and force the opponent to try and sort it out. So it looks like they're going to block Trailblazer, but then they change their mind, and that ends up being their downfall, because single Trailblazer activation gives it +4 power, which allows 8 damage to slip through and seal the deal. So that was pretty fun. Okay, so we're playing another Yorion build. A little bit slower hand. Do have some multiple landfall sources in hand, which is good. So, barring anything we draw, it's going to be a Brushfire Elemental turn 2. Okay, so they play Urban Utopia. It's a really great flicker target for Yorion. And there's Akoum Hellhound right on time. That would have been really nice. Really nice last turn. So I think I actually made a sequencing mistake here. They take out the Brushfire anyway. I think, despite mana efficiency, I should have played Hellhound turn 2. The reason is that Brushfire has haste, so this turn could have followed up with the Brushfire and played the land and then had all the landfall going on. So I think that was an unintuitive play that I missed on that part. So, however, they ended up removing that threat anyway. So who knows what things would have played out, but I think that was a sequencing mistake right there. Okay, so they have all sorts of colors. So most of their hand should probably be live. Another Urban Utopia. Just get them another card, keep fixing their colors. And we have stuff to do. It's just a little clunky, so you see my timer burning down there. The landfall stuff is really tricky to keep track of. It's like, do I hold that until the Hellhound can actually attack, or are we just trying to get as much out as possible? At this point, with no lands in hand, do you play Hellhound or you play Scorch Spitter? So it gets tricky to navigate everything. Now the counter on Thunderkin Awakener is excellent because it allows its attack trigger to bring a lot more of our stuff out of the graveyard. Unfortunately, we don't have anything in there for it to temporarily reanimate at the moment, but it's a good setup for the future if it survives. Now with no lands in hand, I end up playing the Scorch Spitter over the Akoum Hellhound. Fires of Invention is pretty tough. And then we can see what it's all about. Enigmatic. I'm losing my pronunciation right now. That Incarnation card that's blue and green, that's pretty tough. It allows them to go right to their end step, sacrifice an enchantment to pull out a Skyclave apparition, and it already feels like things are slipping away pretty quickly at this point. And so trying to figure out what to do, Domri can minus to allow us to fight the Skyclave and get access to a 3/3 token. Domri's little power anthem passive is pretty nice as far as damage output, but it's a little concerning that they have fires and boy, I'm just struggling. That Incarnation card that I will cease trying to pronounce the first word. So they're going to be able to double spell and then get some sort of value creature by sacrificing a enchantment that's already done the job, like one of those 2-mana ones. So it's looking pretty grim for us. They can even pull up Yorion and blink a bunch of stuff and have a giant blocker. So Showdown of the Scalds is also tough because that's going to give them a ton of fuel just to freely cast off fires. And they got some whammies right there. Tulsamir is really tough. It gets them 2 bodies and also a fight trigger. So they're just selecting which one to take out. And yeah, they take out our Scorch Spitter, gain some life. So it's as soon as the Incarnation came down, it was basically over for us. So now they're going to sacrifice something else. Let's see what they get. So they surprisingly sacked the Showdown of the Scalds, but it makes sense in a second when you see what they choose. The Scarab God. So still trying to do due diligence to figure out how much damage we can deal. And yeah, moving to triple speed at this point because I'm trying my best. I know I could pull something out with Thunderkin. However, it's been so long since I played Scarab God, I forgot about its activated ability. And so it brings back giant Skyclave. And so, despite Atarka's command doing a lot of work here, we are just mega dead. Like I said, kept hanging on because they're a reasonable life, but with the stocked graveyard and a Scarab God, anyway, we are so thoroughly out card advantaged here. We are just super dead. On to the next one. Though that was a really interesting and cool deck the opponent had last game. Turn 1 Scorch Spitter. Had to shock then because the Castle Embereth are coming in tapped unless you have a mountain. And yeah, Hellhound. And we're playing yet another Yorion deck. So Yorion is quite popular. It's just great value, and it enables a lot of powerful and also wacky strategies. So we've already seen 2 very different Yorion builds just during this video. Alright, so Overgrowth Elemental will be really nice. Decide to put the counter on the Rage-Hound because that's a creature, if they kill it, we just get it back later. That was the reasoning for that. Our hand's looking nice, and the opponent's already at 12, so they're going to have to do something to us. Shockland right there is nice for us. They're pondering something. Knight of Autumn. And with its 2 power, the most straightforward thing here to do is, yeah, just gain 2 life, and they can block. However, we have Strangle in hand, and so blocking is not going to happen right now. So we're 1 mana short of being able to still activate Castle Embereth. And so what we're going to do now is just bring Jegantha to hand. Yeah, so they're dead already. This deck is lightning fast when it wants to be. Now this is a little bit of a sketchy keep because as far as the spells we have, it looks great. But the lands are awkward. As it stands right now, these are 2 tap lands because we're not meeting the conditions correctly. So that honestly might have been a mulligan right there. Fight rigging is pretty concerning, especially with our incredibly slow start. Their Llanowar Elves is already outclassing our stuff. Yeah, trying to decide what to play, Scorch Spitter or Akoum Hellhound. Alright, Werewolf Pack Leader. That's pretty tough. And another Werewolf Pack Leader and fight rigging going off. So, yeah, we're effectively already dead right now. You could see my mouse hover over the gear. I was ready just to throw in the towel, but decided just to try and play it out, though. We're going to get to see opponent make a really nice play when we pass it back to them. So I'm just trying my best here, but we're mega dead right now. So what they're going to do is pre-combat activate Werewolf Pack Leader. That gets it up to 6 power. Counter gets it to 7. And so lets them cast something off fight. Anyway, opponent knew what they were doing there and really let us have it. Next game. That's one thing you're seeing about this deck is that it's fast and furious. It's winning fast or losing fast. So you could really get a lot of games in. So we had to mulligan. Have another tough hand with double tap lands off the mulligan. So that's not super great. It ended extremely poorly for us last game. We'll see if we can navigate it this time. Okay, so an untapped land there is really clutch, and especially because it's going to make the Castle Embereth come into play untapped next turn. So the most straightforward thing to do is just play double Scorch Spitter. Seeing snow-covered islands on the other side indicates like mono blue tempo or mono blue spirits. And yeah, we see a Spectral Adversary come into play, and it's pretty clear we're facing mono blue spirits. So surprisingly, they don't attack. And it makes me, well, they don't have rattle chains out, so they can't like flash in a Supreme Phantom. So decide just to send in the Scorch Spitters because as it stands, it's just not a great block for them. Like I said, I was very surprised at the no attack there. So yeah, the Scorch Spitters get their direct damage, and they do decide the block. And they end up using Slip Out the Back. So that, because it phases out, removes it from combat. Our creature still counts as being blocked though. But now their creature's larger than our Scorch Spitters. And they end up essence capturing our Underworld Rage-Hound. But because their creature's phased out, they don't get the bonus +1/+1 counter. Now we're pretty happy to see Underworld Rage-Hound being the thing that gets countered because it's a recursive threat. So given enough time, we'll just bring it back later. So we're happy to see them using counter spells on something like that. So go ahead and try and remove it again, this time with the Strangle. Okay, Rattle Chains comes into play and gives it hexproof. Now this is a little bit of a gamble because Spell Pierce completely wrecks us here. But I decide to play out Domri. If this resolves, then our Scorch Spitters can continue attacking the opponent because of the little power passive Domri has. And so that is really, really nice that we resolved Domri there. And I decided not to activate him yet, just in case something crazy happened and I wanted to fight something post-combat. Is basically the only reason. Okay, so they line up to block with Rattle Chains. And they use Slip Out the Back again. So same trick as before. Decide to just plus Domri. Okay, so now they have some very large spirits. One thing we should be keeping track of is cards in our graveyard so that we can get Underworld Rage-Hound back. Okay, so opponent decides just to take down Domri, and so that really shrinks the threat of our Scorch Spitters. But they could still effectively attack for 2 each, and the opponent's taken a lot of damage already. Now that was possibly a chance to activate Castle Embereth right there. But with some graveyard counting, realized that activating Fabled Passage gets us the requisite cards in the graveyard to escape Underworld Rage-Hound. So yeah, so go ahead and just do that post-combat. And this sort of slams the brakes on what they're trying to do. Oh, except they have the counter. So they use their Geistlit Snare and send it back to the graveyard. However, once again, I'm not too worried about them using a counter spell on Underworld Rage-Hound because that's what it does. It just keeps coming back. So Evolving Wilds is really nice here. It's going to start filling up the graveyard again for the Rage-Hound. It only needs 3 cards there. Now with Castle Embereth, we can pretty safely attack in. If they had, if they have Rattle Chains allows them to flash in a spirit, so it could go poorly for us right here. If they had like an Anthem spirit to flash in. But they line up their blocks, we activate Castle, and nothing happens. So we're pretty happy with that because with 2 Scorch Spitters in the graveyard and an Evolving Wilds, that means we sack Evolving Wilds and Underworld Rage-Hound comes back again. Okay, so they cast a Rattle Chains on our end step. Yeah, so they just attack with Rattle Chains on their turn. And so they've been using their counters repeatedly on Underworld Rage-Hound, so they're running out of cards, but we still have our Jegantha Companion and Underworld Rage-Hound already. Not only that, but we can escape Rage-Hound and still have enough mana to put Jegantha into our hand. Yeah, so I was checking their soft counters actually before I cast Rage-Hound. Anyway, realized that they could have uh, pay 3 or counter I think it's the Geistlit counter, since we'd already seen one. So decided to play the land before, just in case they had that, and then bring Jegantha to hand afterward. Now, right now, it looks like they have a clean block with Rattle Chains to take down our Underworld Rage-Hound, but we have Atarka's command in hand. And so we'll see what happens. A counter spell would be not the end of the world, it'd be a little tough, but we go ahead and give our creatures +1/+1 and deal 3 direct damage, waiting to see what happens. And that was enough. All right, so that's red-green elementals. And yeah, we won a few games, lost a few games. It was pretty fun. Had multiple turn 4 kills with this deck. It just can really shell out the damage when you get the landfall creatures going. The sequencing can get a little tough, like figuring out when to actually use the landfall triggers instead of casting everything else. But I think there's a lot of play to this deck, and you can really raise the skill ceiling with practice. But yeah, there's definitely some flex spots to try and figure out how to refine it. But it was just really fun, really aggressive deck. And it has a little bit of grinding ability. We're able to take out mono blue spirits by just bringing back Underworld Rage-Hound over and over again, exhausting all their counters. So there's a lot of cool things to be done. But yeah, let me know in the comments, what is your favorite red and or green elemental? Anyways, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.